My name is James Campbell. I'm a children's writer and all sorts of other things as well. I write books. Let me show you some of my books. This is The Funny Life of Pets, that's mine. I also write The Funny Life of Teachers, that's mine as well. And I write The Funny Life of Sharks, and more particularly, I write this book here, which is called Write Your Own Funny Stories. I'm not quite sure how to do the title with Write Your Own Funny Stories, because I think some people would say, hey, here's a book, it's called Write Your Own Funny Stories. Or it might be Write Your Own Funny Stories, or it might be Write Your Own Funny Stories, or it might be Write Your Own Funny Stories. I think the way to do it is to imagine that somebody's asked me a really annoying question, like, please will you tell me a funny story? No, write your own funny stories. That's what I'm going with. Anyway, so in this book there are all sorts of writing techniques, and I thought it might be fun if I showed you another writing technique. So this one isn't in the book. It's something that I created just after Christmas time, I think. The time of doing this video, it's March 2021. In January, when we all went into our third and hopefully final lockdown, I came up with this. See what you think. I call it People and Places. I'm going to write that top of my piece of paper. People and Places. It's called People and Places because it's all about people and places. And the idea of this workshop is to help you come up with an idea for a story. In fact, it's more than that. What I want this workshop to do is to help you come up with the best idea for a story you've ever thought of. Okay, so at the end of this video, at the end of you doing this, I want you to have the best idea for a story you've ever had. Now what you can do is you can pause this video as many times as you like. It's a long video. I'm just going to keep on going, and if at any point you're like, well, hang on, I just need to stop here so I can just do this bit here, then just pause and then carry on. It's easy, really. It's YouTube. What could possibly go wrong? So we're going to start off with this. I want you to think of 3 places. Now, places where you have been, okay? Not places that you can imagine, places you have been. When we're writing stories, it's lots of fun to invent a whole new world, or a whole new place, or a country, or a land where everything's made out of donuts. All that stuff is fantastic, or a whole galaxy. I love all that. But I find it's better if you start off with somewhere real and then stretch it and twist it slightly, make it go into different directions. If you take the most fantastic example of a place that I can think of in a book or a film would be in Star Wars. So Tatooine in Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker's from, that's like a desert planet, isn't it? Well, that's an actual place. It's an actual place in Tunisia. And so when they were there filming, that's not something that was totally created. They started off with a desert and then said, well, let's imagine that this desert is the whole planet. And so you take a real thing and stretch it, okay? In my boy face books, have I got one of my boy face books? I have. My boy face books, these are very old now. In these ones, these are all set in a village called Stevenage-on-Sea. And it's a lovely, lovely village by the sea where everything's slightly weird. It's not a real place, but it's based on the village where my mum used to live in Devon, but then I've stretched it and twisted it and moulded it. So I want you to think of 3 places. I want you to write them down. Maybe one of the places could be somewhere that you are in all of the time or most of the time, like a part of your house or your garden or your street. I'm going to go with what I call the Zoom room. Okay, that's the room that I'm in at the moment. And the Zoom room is where I do all of my hosting of the accidental show, all of my virtual school visits. They all happen in this room. It's not just for doing Zoom in, it's also a kind of walk-in wardrobe, but you can't see that because there's a screen here. This is an actual screen. It's not a virtual screen, it's an actual screen. And also there's a bed here as well. So my son, who's only with us sort of every other weekend, then this is where he sleeps. He sleeps in the Zoom room. So it's the spare bedroom, it's the Zoom room, and it's also a wardrobe. So that's my room. I know this room very well because I spent a lot of time in it. Okay, so that's my place. So maybe you've got a place that you know really well. Could be a bedroom, could be the cupboard under the stairs, could be the pond in the garden, could be the attic. I don't know how much time you spend in the attic. It depends on your attic. So that's one place. Write that down. Second place. Maybe think of somewhere that you really miss. In lockdown, during the pandemic, of course, there's lots of places we're not allowed to go to anymore. So is there somewhere that you haven't been to for ages and you miss it? I miss going to see my mum. Where else do I miss? I miss the cafe. The cafes will be open soon, but maybe somewhere like that, somewhere that you miss. I'm going to do my local cafe. It's called Honey and Harvey, and I like to take my daughter there, and I have a decaf latte, and she has a chocolate brownie usually, and a glass of water. We haven't been there for ages, so that's my second place. And then a third place, maybe somewhere like the most exciting place you've ever been to. So it could be somewhere you went on holiday or a school trip or some random expedition. I don't know what goes on in your life, but where's the most exciting place you've ever been to? Okay, I'm going to go with the jungle, the Malaysian jungle. Okay, now this isn't as exciting as it sounds because I was only in the Malaysian jungle for about a minute. I'll explain. Okay, I was doing some shows, my comedy for kids show. I was doing that in Malaysia, which is in Asia, and we did a show in the north somewhere, Penang, I think, and then the rest of my shows were in Kuala Lumpur, which is the capital, and it's at the other end of Malaysia. So we drove, me and the producers and technicians, we all drove in a car all the way down the length of Malaysia, and about halfway we stopped for a service station. Now in the UK where I live, the service station is one thing, yeah. A service station in Malaysia, very different sort of thing. It had, a place you could get food, and there was a toilet, but the toilet was it was sort of out of use, put it that way. And so I needed a wee, and I thought, well, I'm not going in there. It's just disgusting. And so I went back to the car, a British service station. Then I would just hop over the fence and go in a field somewhere. Yeah, but on the other side of the fence from the car park, there was jungle, just a wall of jungle, palm trees, vines, weird plants I've never seen before. And I thought to myself, well, I'll just step into the jungle there and just go behind that palm tree or whatever it is, and have a wee behind the tree. And as I stepped in, I sort of had this feeling that I was going into a totally different world. I left the concrete of the car park and I went into the jungle. And I turned around, I could still see the car park, obviously. I was only like 3 feet away. But I had this sense that if I went any further into the jungle, I would be lost. This terrible sense of, oh, this is a place that I have no control over, and there could be spiders and snakes and scorpions and poisonous plants and I don't know what. And I went right back to the car park and I touched the car. It was almost like I felt that I needed to touch some civilization, some humanity, something mechanical, because I'd been touched by this jungle. I've never been in the jungle since. I haven't had an opportunity to go to the jungle since, but that's my place. It's that bit of the Malaysian jungle was my most exciting place. I didn't like it, but it was very exciting. So hopefully you now also have 3 different places that you've been to. Okay, I say been to. These need to be places that you could write a book set in that place. You could write a story set in that town or that country or that place. Okay, or that room. Could you write a story set in your room? I think I probably could. So those are our places. Okay. The next stage is to do the people. Okay, the people. I'm going to write people at the top of this list. So again, we're looking for 3. It's always 3. 3 people. So these 3 people, again, want to be people that you've actually met. So unless you've met Bear Grylls, don't put him on the list. Maybe the first one should be somebody that you see pretty much every day. Maybe they're a member of your family, your mum or your dad. Doesn't have to be a person, of course. Could be a pet, could be a dog, could be a cat, could be a hamster, could be a tortoise. Okay, so somebody that you know really well, okay, that you've actually asked them questions and go, what's that like? And why do you do that? Somebody you know well. Okay, I'm going to go with my dog. Okay, my dog is called Mrs. Miggins. She's a Cocker Spaniel, which means she's got massive ears, hits herself in the face when she turns her head. And she's not the brightest dog in the world, to be honest, but she's very, very lovely. She's been a bit poorly recently. She has poorly eyes and poorly ears, so she's on lots of medicine. But I was taking her for a walk the other day and I noticed how slow she is now. And I remembered when she was young, we used to climb mountains in Scotland together, and she used to run off ahead and then run back again, run off. And she doesn't run anywhere anymore because she's getting old. So there you go, that's Mrs. Miggins. Second person, maybe the second person is like somebody that you miss. So in lockdown, of course, there's lots of people we can't go and see. So who do you miss? Who do you love and who do you miss? Is it a friend at school? Is it your grandparents? Who haven't you seen for ages and you really, really want to see them? I'm going to go with my friend Ben. Okay, so Ben and I are very good friends, although during all this pandemic stuff we've sort of lost touch, if I'm honest, and I should probably do something about that. I've known Ben for about 10 years now, and his life story is amazing because he started off when he was at school. He didn't do very well at school, and he wasn't very well behaved, and he wasn't very well behaved after he left school either. But then when he got to about 24, 25, he turned his life around completely. He changed all sorts of things about himself, and he found a way to live a better life. And when I met him, he was a bit lost because he'd been working as a bus driver, but then he got diagnosed with an illness called multiple sclerosis, and this makes you very poorly, and so he had to stop being a bus driver. He didn't know what to do for a while. Then he met me, and we were chatting about stuff one day, and he said to me, James, I've decided that I really want to be a maths teacher. I was like, okay. And I said, why? He said, I love maths, and I want to be a teacher. I want to be a maths teacher in a high school. I was like, okay. I said, well, do you know how you do that? What do you need to do? And he said, yeah. He said, well, first of all, I need to go and get my GCSE maths and my GCSE English because I don't have any qualifications. So he went to school. He went to like his local college, and he did GCSE maths and GCSE English. Then he did an A level in maths. That took a year, I think, maybe two. And then he got into university. He did an open university degree in maths. That was 3 years. And then he did a year of being a trainee teacher. And now he is a teacher he's a maths teacher in a high school in Essex, which I think is absolutely amazing. So he's this brilliant maths teacher, but he's got this mysterious past. So I think he could be an interesting character to have in a story. So Ben, he's on Ben the maths teacher. Write him down. So I don't know who your person is. If at any point, by the way, when you're doing this workshop, if you want to email me your story or just email me your ideas, then find me. Get your grown-ups to find me on social media, or I think you can do the comments. Not really sure, really, but send me if you can find a way. If you can find me, send me stuff. I love to read the stuff that you write. So my third person. So my first person is my dog. My second person is my friend Ben. Third person, maybe go with somebody that you only met very briefly, but they've had a lasting impression on you. For you being children, maybe somebody you met on holiday, and for 7 days they were your best friend. Or maybe you met them at the beach, and for 2 hours they were your best friend and it was amazing, and then you never saw them again. Maybe it's somebody you saw, maybe you didn't even speak to them. Maybe it's a homeless person you saw on the street, and you looked at them and they looked at you, and you felt there was a connection, but then you never saw them again, and you don't know anything about them. For me, in normal times, I tend to meet lots of people on trains and on aeroplanes, and while sitting around waiting in railway stations and cafes and stuff, and I love meeting people and connecting with them and hearing their stories. I'm going to put on mine, I'm going to put a guy I met, I can't remember his name, but I was somewhere doing a tour. I think it might have been the Malaysian tour actually, and I met him in an airport, and both of our flights got delayed, and we were in there for ages, and so we ended up having lunch together and chatting together, and he told me all these brilliant stories of traveling around China and Hong Kong. He did something for the British Embassy, I think, and he told me all these great stories about things that had happened to him on aeroplanes and stuff like that. And I liked him. I don't know what his name was. I'll call him Aeroplane Man. Aeroplane Man sounds a bit like a rubbish superhero, but that's okay. I know who he is. The thing when you're writing notes and doing workshops, what I love about it, and what you should love about it too, is that what you're writing here doesn't matter what you write down. None of it's wrong. All of it's good enough. Okay, you can't do a wrong answer. It's creative, and nobody's going to mark it. Nobody's going to lean over your shoulder and go, I don't like that, or that's spelled wrong, or that's messy. Okay, my handwriting is messy, and sometimes I spell things wrong, and that doesn't matter. So, we now should have 3 places and 3 people. Now, the next thing we're going to do is twist the people. Okay, you can do them one at a time. When I say twist the people, don't twist your sister. That would be a disaster. Take a person or dog or whatever it is, and then I want you to change them slightly. You can do it just randomly, just whatever way you feel is a good idea to do, but also maybe think about the sort of story you want to write. If you are the sort of person that loves writing space adventure stories, then you need to twist your person to be somebody that fits into that. Yeah. If you like writing adventure stories, if you like writing detective stories or funny stories, whatever the story is, or if you want to write a gritty school-based reality type story, then you need to turn that person into there. So for example, my aeroplane man, if I was actually going to write a story that was set in a school in a difficult area, and there's lots of true stories and it's gritty and real, then I might want to turn him into a teacher or the caretaker. Maybe he's a caretaker who has been on lots of adventures, so he's got lots of stories to tell, and now he's the caretaker of the school. So that could be. So maybe I'll do that. So I'm going to give him a name because I don't know what his name was. So I'll call him Mr. Carter because that's the first name that's come into my head. When I'm naming characters, I normally just go with the first name that comes into my head, and then when I start writing the story, their real name will come through somehow, and then it's easy just to go back through your Word document and go find replace Mr. Carter with Mr. Bewilder something. I don't know whatever his new name is going to be. So Mr. Carter, the caretaker. Okay, so he's still the person I met at the airport. He still has all those same stories, but now I've twisted him. Now he's a caretaker. Okay, maybe if I took Mrs. Miggins, my dog. If I was going to write a fantasy adventure story, maybe she's not a dog, maybe she's a wizard. Okay, because she's not the brightest dog, she wouldn't be the brightest wizard either. So maybe she's like an apprentice wizard. There are lots of stories like, well, there's the Sorcerer's Apprentice, aren't there? That whole idea of being somebody who's learning to be a wizard. There's at least 1 million of those sorts of stories. So there's nothing hugely original there, but there's a good reason these things get used a lot. And then of course we've got Ben the Maths. Now what can I turn him into? I like the idea of a teacher with a mysterious past. So maybe first of all I'm going to change his gender. I'm going to stop him being Ben. I'm going to call him Chloe. Okay, so now I've turned him into a girl. He's still my friend, but I've changed his gender. Okay, and he's still maybe a maths, maybe I think he's a science teacher. Yeah, so well, she's a science teacher. Chloe, the science teacher, with a mysterious past. Maybe she used to be a cat burglar, or some sort of thief. Maybe a jewel thief. Not sure. Right. My plan, by the way, after this is to then show you the piece of paper that I've been writing on, but I've realised that I'm so excited about this that my handwriting is gone. It'll be fine. I'll write it out again neatly afterwards. So, choose a person, twist them. You can twist them more than once. You can say, well, maybe I'll twist them the other way. So I could take Ben the maths teacher again. I could change him. Okay, well, maybe he's not a maths teacher. Maybe he's not even a teacher. Maybe he's just, he's a postman. He's a postman. With a mysterious past, and his past catches up with him because he has to deliver a letter to somebody from his past. That's quite interesting. So that's another way of doing it. I could take the dog and I could say, I don't want to write a fantasy story. I want to write a funny story that's a bit like my Funny Life book stories, that sort of style. I want him in one of those, or her in one of those. I mean, she actually is she's in the Funny Life of Pets because she's in that sort of book. But maybe the book I've got coming out soon is called The Funny Life of Football. So maybe she's in the Funny Life of Football. Maybe she was a football player. If my dog was a football player, she'd be brilliant at football. But she'd be terrible at the post-match interviews. So I could turn her into, what shall I call her? I'll call her Gloria, because that's the name that popped in my head. Gloria Sponge. Gloria Sponge plays centre forward. She's a women's footballer and she plays centre forward for Manchester United and England. And she's brilliant at scoring goals. She's an amazing footballer, but she can't do post-match interviews because she can't remember anything about anything that happens. So she's like a footballer with no memory. That's an interesting character for a story, isn't it? So you can see what I'm doing, okay? I hope you're having the same sort of success as I am. Just need some water. Taking real people and twisting them. So once you've got maybe 3 people, maybe just 1, you'll know when you get a good one. It's now time to put them in to one of the places on your other list. So go to look at your other list. So my places are the Zoom room, which is here, Honey and Harvey, my local cafe, and the Malaysian jungle. So what happens if I take one of my twisted people and put them in one of my places? Let me see. Okay, so let's take Gloria Sponge, the forgetful footballer, and if I put her into, I've just realised I called her Sponge. People say you've always got a brain like a sponge as a way of, you're really good at remembering things. So it's quite funny that her name is Sponge and she can't remember anything. So what if she was in my Zoom room? Ooh, that'd be a bit weird. What if I was doing a virtual author visit and then I looked around and there was a footballer on my bed? How did they get there? She must have broken. Well, she wouldn't remember because she can't remember anything. So then I've got a mystery. The mystery of trying to find out why there's an international footballer in my room. That's quite interesting. Or what if I took Mr. Carter, the caretaker, who's been around the world, and I put him in my local cafe? Would that be a story? It could be I go to the cafe with my daughter and we have to share a table with this chap. That would be exciting, wouldn't it? Sharing a table with. I mean, I haven't been near anybody for like a year. So imagine having to share a table and being really close. And people would be like, oh, are we allowed to be really close? And you'd be like, have you been vaccinated? Yes, I've been vaccinated. Okay, well, I think we're fine then. Let's be really close. Let's connect with each other. We haven't met and I haven't sat in a cafe and had a conversation with a stranger for a year. How amazing would that be? Tell me your stories. Tell me where you've been. And he would tell me all these stories about Hong Kong and China. The real aeroplane man told me a great story that he was on a flight and they nearly crash landed, but the pilot just made it on time, just stopped at the end of the runway. But this chap, he was so worried that he put his life jacket on even before anything had happened. He got his life jacket from under his seat and put it on and inflated it and sat there just waiting to be dropped into the ocean. And he wasn't, nothing happened, he was fine. And he got off at the airplane, he went through security, and he got in the taxi, and he got to the hotel. And it was only when he got to the hotel that the receptionist at the hotel said to him, are you aware you're wearing a life jacket? He'd done the whole journey wearing an inflated life jacket and had forgotten because he was so stressed about the whole thing. So, if I met him in my local cafe after the pandemic, that would be an amazing story. I'm really looking forward to meeting and talking to strangers in cafes. I feel a bit emotional about it, to be honest. So, what's the third possibility? Let's look at Chloe, the science teacher, the jewel thief. What if I put her in the Malaysian jungle? Why would she be in the Malaysian jungle? Maybe she's stealing something from a house or a palace that's in the jungle. It's like a jungle princess and she's got an amazing jewel, and then Chloe the science teacher turns up. Maybe this happened like 10 years ago, but now there are some kids in her class. She teaches in a school in Essex or London or Manchester or Scotland or probably somewhere I've been would be a good idea, wouldn't it? So maybe my local high school, maybe the school that my older boys go to. Maybe she's a teacher there and they come home and they're like, Dad, there's something weird about Miss whatever her name is. She's got all these stories, but there's something going on. And then they look her up on the computer and they realise that, oh, this is the jewel thief that nobody could catch. She is the, like the Pink Panther or the Purple Puma. She's the Purple Puma. Oh, could work, couldn't it? So that's interesting. So that's 3 ideas for a story I've come up with. Or maybe I could take... oh, by the way, I haven't planned any of this. I've got the workshop planned, but the things I'm choosing, I want to come up with, I'm genuinely coming up with as I'm doing this to show you, well, mainly I want to show you just how easy it is to come up with ideas for stories, okay? And I want you to be doing the same thing with me. So I'm hoping that by now you've got your 3 places, you've got your 3 people, you've twisted a few of them, maybe all of them, maybe you've twisted 1 or 2 of them in 2 or more different ways, and now you're having lots of fun thinking, what would happen if I put this person in this place? Often you think, I can't put my best friend in the middle of the desert, that would never work. Or if I put my dad in the roller rink that I used to, that he would hate it. Well, sometimes those make the best stories when you take a person and you put them out of their comfort area, out of their place where they know where everything is, put them somewhere alien and different where they're not comfortable, and now you've got a story. Because stories are about problems, stories are about things going wrong, stories are about characters who need to change something, they need to push on, they need to find something out, they need to solve the problem often of where they are. So put them somewhere that they don't like, an idea for a story might turn up. I'm hoping that by now you've probably got the best idea for a story you've ever had, haven't you? Please tell me you have. Yeah. So that basically is the workshop. I'm hoping that you're now at a point where you're like, oh, okay, I think I could write this story. My experience is to wait a little while and do some more planning. This exercise, People and Places, is a great way of getting that first idea, an idea that you could probably write down in a couple of sentences. Yeah. So for example, me. I forgot about my apprentice wizard. Mrs. Miggins, the apprentice wizard, finds herself working in the kitchen at Honey and Harvey. Mrs. Miggins finds herself working in the kitchens at Honey and Harvey. Okay, she's a wizard, but she's also trying to be a chef, and it's all going wrong because she's trying to use magic to cook food, and it's not working. People are eating food, and then they're having magic effects on their tummies, which nobody really wants. They do not want magical vomit. No. So you've got yourself an idea. I could write that in 2 sentences, yeah? But I'm not going to start writing the story yet. There are all sorts of other techniques that you could use to help plan your story. In my book here, Write Your Own Funny Story, there's all sorts of things. There's the detective technique. I use that quite a lot, the detective technique. I've got a whole video on that on the other on the channel there somewhere. You could draw pictures. I love drawing pictures of my stories. That's probably what I would do next. I would choose a story and I'd sit and draw a picture. I am not an illustrator. Other people like Rob Jones, they do that sort of thing for me, which is ace. But I will sit and draw a picture of my apprentice wizard in the restaurant, or of my airplane man, the caretaker in a school, or of my cat burglar science teacher in the Malaysian jungle. Yeah, I will do all of that. I'll draw a picture. I love labeling my pictures as well. Just labels can be the bridge between the two things. So use techniques like this. Find out what these techniques are. Some people like to use story mountains or mind maps. I like to use story rainbows. There's a whole section on story rainbows in here as well. But whatever you do, try and get yourself to the point where you've done all this planning, you've done all these pictures, and you're bursting. You're feeling to yourself, I just want to write the story now. And when you get to that stage, that's a good time to write the story. Maybe at some point I'll do a workshop video on here which gives you some tips on keeping on going. But for the moment, all that stuff is in here, which you can get this book in all good bookshops and some terrible bookshops as well. Personally, I like to go to independent online booksellers, and they send them to me in the post. It's awesome. But good luck with your writing. I hope this has helped in some way. If it has, then let me know. If it hasn't, then keep it to yourself. I've been James Campbell. Thank you very much, and goodbye.